Hello everyone, I am Grand Royson. Welcome to new video, Volume 3 Chapter 5. While sleeping, the boys suddenly get waken up by the girls, who appear upset. Shinohara informs that Karuizawa's underwear has been stolen. As their luggage was put outside the tents to make space, Shinohara believes someone has gone through them and taken it. Karuizawa is in tears and being comforted by other girls in the tent, while the boys become alerted of the situation. The girls then ask to check the boys' luggage and Hirata spends some time convincing them to go along with it. As Ike checks his bag, he finds the underwear placed in there and becomes panicked. Yamauchi spots it and Ike frantically denies being the culprit. Kiyotaka concludes that Ike was framed since he wouldn't have hidden the evidence in his own bag and he was also acting normal. As his turn is next, Ike thrusts the underwear to Kiyotaka's hands and asks him to hide it before scurrying off. Yamauchi also quickly apologizes and follows after him. Kiyotaka decides to hide it in his pocket. Hirata finishes searching the boys' luggage and finds nothing. The girls then demand to inspect Ike, Yamauchi and Kiyotaka as they've noticed them acting suspiciously. When checking Kiyotaka, Hirata notices the underwear in his pocket but tells the girls that he doesn't have it. Hirata then reassures the girls and asks them to discuss the matter later. After going back to the tent, Kiyotaka asks Hirata on why he didn't tell the girls. Hirata asks if he was the one taking the underwear, to which Kiyotaka denies. Hirata believes him and Kiyotaka says it was in Ike's bag. Hirata doesn't think Ike took the underwear either. Then asks Kiyotaka to give it to him, saying that it would cause the least damage as he is Karuizawa's boyfriend. He also points out the possibility of someone in the camp being the culprit. Kiyotaka analyzes the incident while Hirata asks him to find the theft. He also asks Kiyotaka to only report it to him, since he wants to settle things peacefully with the culprit. Kiyotaka suspects that Hirata doesn't fully trust him and wants to cover the truth. The girls request to live separately from the boys as they still believe the culprit is among them. D-Class's unity starts falling apart as both sides have a huge argument about it. The girls, led by Karuizawa and Shinohara, ask Hirata for help as they can trust him, but Suzune opposes against it. Suzune explains her reasoning and wants another boy, in this case, Kiyotaka, to watch over Hirata. The girls cast their doubts on him, but Eri tries to defend him. Karuizawa lashes out at Eri and starts teasing her, with other girls joining in. Unable to bear it, Eri runs off into the forest. After further explanations from Suzune, Karuizawa agrees to let Kiyotaka be on guard as he seems to be the most harmless and Hirata is fine with it. Trying to calm both parties, Hirata voices his thoughts over the matter, stating that he does not want the class to doubt their own classmates. Someone then mentions Ibuki as a possible suspect but Shinohara and Karuizawa still keep their suspicions on the boys. Kiyotaka takes part in moving the girls' tents away and talks with Hirata. Hirata says he has been working hard because he thinks the test is an opportunity to bring the class closer. He then gets pulled over to the girls' side for help and Kiyotaka finishes the remaining work. As he is about to rest, Ibuki comes over and talks to him. They discuss the underwear incident, with Ibuki being aware that the class will suspect her as she is the stranger. Kiyotaka expresses his trust in her. Ibuki is surprised and looks at him, then thanks him for his words. Kiyotaka, by looking into her eyes, concludes that she is the culprit that has stolen the underwear and hidden it in Ike's bag. At the end of the 5th day, there is an oppressive atmosphere within the camp. Kiyotaka talks with Suzune while helping the girls out. Suzune expresses her distrust in Hirata and reveals that the girls had used points to buy more items for their tents and Hirata has been keeping it a secret to avoid conflict in the class. She wants Kiyotaka to work with her to find out the culprit as soon as possible so they will not hinder their class. They talk more about the current situation and Suzune begins to head back to the tent. Kiyotaka stops her and points out that she is sick. Suzune tries to deny but Kiyotaka checks her forehead and quickly understands that she has a fever. He has noticed her condition back in the ship and the signs that she was ill. Kiyotaka then asks if she intends to hide it, and Suzun says she will carry on through the end. On the 6th day, the weather starts turning worse and D-class begins to move. Hirata instructs them to go out and search for food in groups. Kiyotaka is in the same group with Suzun, Eri, Yamauchi and Kushida. He also asks Ibuki to join in. After going into the forest, Suzun tells them to go in pairs to search, with her going with Kiyotaka. They talk about the key card and Kiyotaka asks to see it, mentioning that he saw something similar on Katsuragi. After checking it, Kiyotaka says it's different from Katsuragi. He then returns the card to Suzun but drops it in the process. Suzun manages to snatch it and gives him a stern look as they've attracted the others' attention. Kiyotaka gives an excuse and goes to talk with Yamauchi. He asks him to smear some mud on Suzun and in return, he will give him Eri's address. Yamauchi agrees and proceeds to do it, and gets thrown by Suzun as a result. After returning to the base camp, Suzun decides to go washing up as her hair and clothes are covered with mud. Kiyotaka suggests her to go to the river since the shower is already occupied by other girls. Ibuki and Eri prefer to stay back, while Yamauchi goes back to the tent to take a rest after being beaten. After Suzun has finished washing herself and returned, Kiyotaka notices her anxious expression. They come to a place far enough from the camp to talk. Suzun then admits that she has lost the key card and suspects Karuizawa and Ibuki. Kiyotaka says that Karuizawa was at the shower the entire time, leading to Ibuki being the main suspect. He reassures her and she tells him to return to the camp to keep an eye on Ibuki. A fire happens in the camp and Kiyotaka and Suzun rush over to check. They then realize the manual has been burned while some students are also there witnessing the scene, including Ibuki. Hirata tries to put out the fire while wearing a dark expression and Kiyotaka comforts him. As the class's atmosphere is in turmoil again, rain starts to fall. The students continue their bickering while Hirata just stands still in confusion. Yamauchi then notices Ibuki has disappeared, but the rain gets heavier and the students hurriedly shove the luggage and food into the tents. As Hirata has fallen into a depression state, supposedly due to all the burden and issues that happened, Kiyotaka approaches and helps him regain his awareness. Kiyotaka then realizes Suzun has also gone as well and proceeds to head towards the beach. After some chasing, Suzun confronts Ibuki in the forest. Ibuki feigns ignorance and asks for proof of her being the underwear theft. Suzun then asks her to return what she has stolen, but Ibuki pretends not to know and starts running off. She then stops at a place marked beforehand and starts digging the ground. She also notices Suzun's heavily worsening condition. Ibuki stops digging and drops her bag to the ground. As Suzun gets near, Ibuki throws a kick and starts attacking her since no one else is nearby. Suzun tries her best to defend while assessing herself as being a hindrance that holds back her class due to her condition and pride. Ibuki reveals that she has stolen the key card, but denies being the one who burned the manual as there is no gain for her in doing so. She also mentions that someone else had figured her out before Suzun, then knocks her unconscious. After beating Suzun, Ibuki returns to her work. She then notices the flashlight and wireless transceiver that she had buried look slightly different, but pays no mind and begins to contact someone. Shortly after, Ryuan arrives and praises her for her work. Ibuki had intended to use her digital camera to take a photo of the key card, but since it got unexpectedly broken, she had to risk stealing it and was caught by Suzun. Ryuan checks the card while Katsuragi also appears. After the test started, Ryuan had coaxed A-class to cooperate with C-class. Katsuragi then checks the card and accepts Ryuan's proposal. After he has left the area, Ibuki asks Ryuan about the negotiation details. She also questions Katsuragi's credibility but Ryuan assures that he's had it covered. She then put the key card back to Suzun's hand after wiping off the fingerprints and leaves with Ryuan. Meanwhile, Kiyotaka had been chasing after Ibuki and Suzun by following their footprints. He hid himself when noticed other people at the scene. After they've left, he cautiously approaches and finds an unconscious Suzun lying on the ground. He confirms that more people have discovered Suzun's position as D-class's leader and picks up the key card. He then lifts her into his arms and she starts to awake. She tells him that Ibuki has stolen their key card and keeps blaming herself. She also felt she could hear Ryuan's voice, but Kiyotaka says she was probably dreaming. Suzun apologizes and Kiyotaka advises her to start making allies. Suzun is still determined to get to A-class using her own abilities and mutters that she is still alone. Kiyotaka embraces her and tries to convince her to cooperate with the class as she can't fight by herself and he'll help her. After Suzun has lost consciousness again, Kiyotaka tries to bring her back but takes a wrong path and tumbles down a slope. He finds shelter under a large tree and lays Suzun down. Suzun wakes up after some time and Kiyotaka explains what happened as she is confused. He then tells her to retire but Suzun refuses due to the points deduction. She intends to try to return by herself by tomorrow morning and tells him to go back for the roll call. Kiyotaka is concerned that their classmates will blame her, but Suzun accepts and says that everything was her responsibility. Kiyotaka then asks her for the cause of their situation and whether not retiring is the right decision. Suzun still refuses to retire and claims her negligence led to her failure, but Kiyotaka rejects it. Suzun pleads for him to go as she considers him her friend, but covers her mouth in surprise after slipping it out. She tries to stand up but loses conscious again. Kiyotaka takes her into his arms, lets out a sigh then reveals his internal thoughts. He never thought of her as his friends or cared of her as a classmate. Winning is everything and the methods don't matter. He doesn't care what he has to sacrifice as long as he has his victory in the end. All people are nothing more than tools and she was just useful to him. Kiyotaka then finds his way to the beach using his memory and spots the ship. He then returns to bring Suzun back to the ship, then asks to retire her when a teacher finds them. He also confirms that only he will miss the roll call, as Suzun's retirement happens before it, and hands over the key card to the teacher before heading back. If you like this video please like, subscribe and share for more. Thanks you all, meet you in another video.